Hello and welcome to the August 2020 layout update from the Trent Valley Railway. In this update we'll take a look at this DCC Sound Class 68. We'll look at the work I've done on the point motors, and looking like the point motors are operating the points coming into the container depot. And finally a look at the shunt signals. So this is the view from the driver's cab, or even the line side down the container depot. So welcome to this month's layout update. There's a few things to get through, but first let's have a look at this DCC Sound Class 68 now for the layout. So this is just one of the sort of different variations of the startup for this Class 68. The DCC chip in here is from Lego Mambiffo, so lots of different features on the sound decoder. I hope you enjoyed that start to this layout update. We'll now take a look at the point motors and the signals that I've been installing on the layout. In the last layout update, I showed you the progress on starting to add the line side detail, particularly here coming into the container depot and the point motors. I needed to just paint up one last point motor to match up with the other three that I already had, and I've now done this and also then started to install these next to the points. I've looked at how these get sort of fitted in real life, and also looked at the sort of levels of the point motor relative to the sleeper and the track. So I've added a small bit of card underneath, and this also helps with how the sort of throw on the point itself is switched across. I've cut down the edges and the little bit that sticks up off the throw mechanism on the point, and I've then glued down with 2 layers of card the point motors onto an extra bit of cork underlay, and I'll eventually just ballast around that, as well as putting some sort of wires that will go back to the cable trunking. So I'll just show you that working now with the point switching coming in and out of the point motors. So I'll just show you with these two here how, because I've raised up the point motor kit from Pico above, there's just sort of ground level on top of the cork underlay. If I switch these points, the throw mechanism doesn't get stuck in there, so those will operate rather nicely with throwing the points and looking like the point motors are operating the points coming into the container depot. In this month's layout update, I'm going to be installing these ground position signal kits on the exit from the container depot, and also over here on the shunt neck siding over there where the 68 is. So for this I've got 4 ground position light signal kits to make up and wire up from Traintech. These I will be having in the 2 red and 2 white lighting arrangement, and then I've also got 2 of these packets of the SC1 DCC signal controller to control the 2 aspect signals for each of these. So I'll now get into, first of all, wiring one of these up and showing you the connections that are required to and from the signal kit and the DCC controller. I've connected the wires and soldered them on to the ground position signal. The brown at the very top goes to the common negative. The pink wire goes to the red lights, and the orange goes to the white lights. Both of those, for the pink and the orange, go back to the positive side of the connection, and you can wire these up with DC, but as I said earlier, I've got a DCC controller unit here, so we'll get this in position on the layout and I'll show you the connections then for the wiring back to the DCC controller. Here is the shunt signal in position next to the shunt neck for the container depot. So it's just before the crossover there into the container depot, and I've just pushed it through the baseboard with a 4.5mm hole. I'll add the signal head casing to this in a minute once I've tested that I've wired it up correctly and it shows the lights through the DCC control unit. I've now put the power on, so I've wired it up correctly, and what I'll do is just quickly do the same for the other signals down at the container depot. Get those wired in and I can show you the wiring connections underneath, and then we'll come back and have a look at fitting the case over the top of this signal. So I now have the two DCC units installed here for controlling the shunt signals. These are the black units and they have a common negative at port number 1 and then the two outputs for each pair of shunt signals coming out of there. So you've got the pink and the orange wires going back to each shunt signal. There's a small button on these to then learn the accessory decoder for the number that you need to put in, and when you press the button the lights will flash. So I'll show you that sequence now as we go back and set the accessory number to the shunt signal I've just installed on the main board above, and we'll watch it hopefully turn from the 2 red to 2 white aspect. So I've pressed the learn button on the accessory unit underneath the baseboard, and now if I press on the item that I'd like it to be on my Z21 app for that signal control, you'll see it stopped, and if I then switch between it being on and off, I now have control of that via the DCC accessory decoder unit. So the last part in building this signal kit for the shunt signal that I've just installed there is to add the signal casing. So these are very delicate and only require a very small amount of glue, so I'm holding them together with the tweezers and I'll just dab them into a very small bit of glue that I'll put onto the card, and then we'll hopefully see what it looks like with the casing around the signal. So this is now the shunt signal complete with the casing over the top of the LEDs, and this is just a side-on view here of the 2 red LEDs showing full stop. This looks really impressive when you get down line side and look at it straight on as well for when it gets changed to the 2 white LEDs. So let's now go and have a look at the 3 signals I've got at the container depot end. So these are the next 3 shunt signals that I've installed. They're on the exit from the container depot, and all of these are wired back up to the DCC control unit. Now the one is slightly not as obvious as the other 2, and I'll come back to that shortly, but as I said, these look great from when you're sort of looking at them straight on. Now because these are a kit and you have to glue the casing together, there is a little bit of light bleed that you get when you have to attach the casing together if you haven't aligned it spot on or the moulds are not exactly flat. So what I've got on the very back one is already looking to get some just model filler from Humbrol just to fill the gap over the join that you get between the casing, so that when I look at this from side on, which will be most of the time, you won't see the light bleed. So this is a closer look at just a very thin layer of the model filler that I've put in over that shunt signal at the very back. I'll do the same for all of these here and the other one in the shunt neck siding. I'm then also going to paint these up with a bit of a grey colour on the back of the casing rather than the black that comes as standard for these, to make it look more like the modern image and the rest of the signals that I'll have on the layout. So these are now the finished signal kits that I've been installing over the last month here, and these are the shunt signals for the container depot lines. So I've added a bit of paint, and I've also, as I mentioned, filled in the gaps where there was light bleed before. So from a side-on angle now like this, it looks really nice, and I'll just show you what it looks like from the driver's eye view and looking straight on at these 3 signals. So this is the view from the driver's cab, or even the line side down the container depot, And now all three of these shunt signals are installed, each of them through the DCC control that I have is able to change between the red and the white. So I'm happy now that those have been installed, so let's have a look at some trains running through the container depot and these signals. So thanks for watching this month's layout update. Check back in soon for more progress on the Trent Valley Railway. Cheers.